Chris, thank you so much for joining me. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Great to be part of it.
Well, listen, I've got to know, how did you get into cycling? What happened? Where did it start?
Well, I would love to tell you that I was inspired by some amazing cycling performance that I saw on TV or I saw as a kid, but actually I was inspired to take up cycling after watching the film E.T. And I'd never seen a BMX bike before. And it was the first time, and it was just, to me, it was the most exciting thing, like through the eyes of a 6-year-old boy. It was, an entirely different way to use a bike and to ride a bike. And that was what got me hooked.
That is lovely. I love that E.T. got you into cycling. That's wonderful.
I've got a lot to thank Steven Spielberg for, put it that way.
Absolutely. I hope he's listening in. You never know. You never know. So, and when you started as a youngster, who encouraged you, supported you, and helped you?
I think my family were the most important people. Well, they have been the most important people in my whole life, but certainly for my cycling career, my mum and dad, my dad, I guess in the early days, I did BMX racing, and it started out as a way to spend more time with my dad because he was working so hard through the week, and it was time for us to, it gave us the opportunity to spend time together, and we went away just having fun, and it was never, a career path, or it was never even on the horizon that I could possibly ever make a career out of cycling. So it was just for fun. We would go away racing BMX every weekend around Scotland, eventually all around the UK, and that was how I got into competitive cycling in my childhood years.
And who saw that you had something special?
Well, I don't think I necessarily had something special. I think that was part of what I learned growing up, was that, I think that the word talent gets bandied about an awful lot, and the word talent, I think, can be misleading because to me it suggests that there's very little hard work involved, that talent is something that's magic. You just have it or you don't have it. You're either good at something or you're not good at something. But as I grew up, I saw and I learned myself that success comes from hard work, and we all have potential, and it's about realizing that potential. It's not about just getting out of bed and suddenly becoming great at playing the violin or being a good cyclist or being successful in business. Whatever it is you do, it doesn't matter who you are. You have to work hard at it. So I guess it took me a long time to sort of realize, or it took me quite a short term to realize the correlation between hard work and success. But it took me a long time to get to the point where I was becoming successful in cycling. When I became world champion when I was 26, which is pretty old in sort of in sprint cycling, certainly. And I was Olympic champion when I was 28 for the first time. So it took me a long time of very gradual small steps and small improvements over the years.
And actually, cycling's famous for the marginal gains, isn't it? The small improvements. That works so well with business as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it can be applied to life in general. It's so hard to make huge improvements in one area, and when you take up a new activity or you start something for the first time, that's the steep part of the learning curve. That's where you really do make the big gains. But after a while, once you get to a certain level, it can be very frustrating because you plateau. You wonder how you can possibly improve. You're trying your hardest. You're doing everything, or you think you're doing everything you possibly can. But that's the point that you really have to focus in on the detail. And if you can improve even by 0.1% or 0.001%, giving multiple improvements of tiny fractions together, that's when you see the overall gain. So yeah, cycling for us as a team, we used, I suppose, Formula One as a model to follow, where you look at how the lengths that they go to try and improve every single possible thing, even by the tiniest margin. So we used that as inspiration, and I think it applies to life. Oh yeah.
Fantastic. Now, tell me, I've read articles where you've talked about the pain you've gone through and how tough it is on the body. How do you mentally stay there when you're exhausted and everything's hurting? I think somewhere you actually said it felt like you were dying. Is that right?
Yeah, a little bit melodramatic I was, but it does. At the time, I guess it's the body's way of telling you to stop and slow down and to rest. But when you're exercising, it's not just you're not just riding along at a steady level for a long time. The events that I used to do were very short, very high intensity, and it produces lactic acid, really intense stinging sensation in the muscles. And the way to improve and to get better and to teach your body how to cope with the lactic acid is to do repeated hard efforts in training. You do sprint, short recovery, and so on and so on. And this lactic acid gets higher and higher and higher. And there's no two ways about it. It is very painful, and it's not a nice sensation. And the only way that I could deal with that, well, first of all, I knew that I had to push myself harder than anybody else. In my mind, my confidence on race day came from the preparation, from knowing I'd done the work. So I didn't believe that I was invincible. I didn't believe that I was better than anybody else, but I believed that I could work harder than everybody else. So my confidence came from being, truly look in the mirror on the race morning and say, you have done everything you possibly could to be in the best shape today. And then you can relax and hopefully enjoy the experience. So every training day, when you're getting to that point where you're really, really struggling and it is really painful and you wonder whether you can keep going on, you remind yourself of the importance of every single effort and every single session. And again, you don't look too far ahead. You don't think about the next day or the next week or how much more you have to do that session. You just think about one thing at a time. You live in the present, get the effort done, and it's done, on to the next one, and never think too far ahead.
That's really powerful. Be in the present, not think too far ahead, focus on what you've done, and just appreciate that you've done all the preparation and all the planning and it's all done. I like that a lot. Did you ever have some kind of routine that you would follow to get your mindset right on race day, or did you just go in there and you were ready?
Yeah, well, over the years, you sort of develop your physical warm-up routine, and during that physical warm-up routine, it could take almost an hour or an hour and a half from the start of the warm-up to the end of it. And you don't need to spend that length of time physically preparing yourself, but it's allowing you that sort of zone to get your mind in the right state. So over the years, you develop the techniques, you put your headphones in, you listen to, you have a sort of a playlist of tracks that get you in the right frame of mind. But it was actually Dr. Steve Peters, our team psychologist, who really helped me to have the same routine and to prepare and to address all the fears and all the worries that you might have before a race, and to basically, to go into a race without fear and without any pressure. And pressure, it's all about your own perception. It's about perspective. And I had this little routine that took many, many months to hone it down. But in the end, I could almost switch it on within the space of a minute or 2 minutes when I was very used to it. But in the early days, it could take half an hour to get yourself in that state. But Steve was really good at encouraging us to get perspective, to realize that we're just racing bikes in anti-clockwise circles. It's not life and death. It's actually quite trivial. It's entertainment, but you have to care about it. You have to be passionate about it. Otherwise, you wouldn't work hard enough to be the best at it. So it's getting that fine balance of realizing that it is important to yourself because you want to do well. But at the end of the day, the world is not going to stop turning if you don't win this race.
And did you use the technique of visualizing yourself as the winner as well? Did you use that?
No, we never focused on the end goal. So you would set that end goal and, at the start of the year, and you'd have your targets, but it was always about focusing on the process of what you had to do and not the outcome. So process versus outcome was something you were, it was almost our mantra, I suppose. You don't worry about whether you're going to win, whether you're going to lose, the what ifs, because you have no control over that. And that creates anxiety and stress because you don't know what your rivals are going to do. But if you know that you follow the right process and you do what you're capable of doing, you will give yourself the best chance of getting the best result. So it got to the point where, I visualized the performance, the process of a race in Athens at the 2004 Olympics. And when I got to the finishing line, I visualized the race so many times, but when I got to the finishing line, I hadn't visualized beyond the line. I didn't want to think about what victory or defeat might feel like. So I was almost lost. I didn't really know what to do when I won. It was a really kind of weird scenario. So, which sounds strange, but in the moment, you're almost in this zone, this tunnel of thought and vision. And then when you get to the end of it, you sort of pop out and it almost doesn't feel like it's real.
Do you know, I really like that. I really like the fact that you're focusing on the process rather than the outcome. I think that's incredibly powerful because, as you say, whatever happens, win or lose, it doesn't knock you back, does it? Because
Yeah,
you
exactly.
just, I suppose you tweak the process slightly. You see where you didn't follow it correctly or what you can do to improve. I love that. Really love that.
At the end of the day, you can only be the best that you can be. So, if somebody's better than you and you've genuinely trained as hard as you possibly can, your diet, your preparation, everything has been as good as it possibly could be, and you come second or third or fourth, then you have to accept that. That's life. Not everybody can win. But if you haven't given your best, my biggest fear wasn't losing. My biggest fear was arriving on race day and not being in the best possible shape and not giving my best performance when it counted. I knew that if I did that, I could reconcile myself with whatever happened, but I couldn't if I hadn't given my best, or if I hadn't committed in every single day of training. So that took the pressure off. It's a bit like studying for your exams or whatever. If you feel you've done the preparation, you can go in confident, or not confident that you're going to do well, but confident that you can do the best that you possibly can on the day.
And if you don't prepare, like I didn't when I was younger, you still have nightmares for years later.
Well, I do. That's it's bizarre, isn't it? I mean, every now and again, I'll have a dream about turning over the exam paper and just looking at the questions and thinking, I don't recognise any of these at all. It's a common theme, isn't it?
Not just me then. Oh, that's good. I thought I was losing my mind. But anyway, tell me, so Chris, this process that you used, did you apply it to your racing as well, your motor racing?
I try to apply it to everything, and it's not something like Steve used to say to us. You can't just go in for one meeting with him. He tells you, this magic secret that unlocks everything, and then it's your mental approach is fixed, and that's it done. It's like going into the gym once, lifting a weight once, and thinking, well, that's me strong now forever. You still have to apply the philosophies on a daily basis. You have to use them, and they're very powerful techniques. His whole sort of mind model is about controlling emotion when you don't want to be angry or distracted or any kind of emotion that you don't want in the heat of battle when you're about to compete, or when you're doing anything, when you want to be calm and focus on the process. So he calls that caging your chimp, and the chimp is the emotional part of the brain, and his techniques are basically divert the blood flow away from the chimp part of the brain to a logical kind of computer or the human side of the brain. So I use that on a daily basis. You're on the phone paying a gas bill and you're on hold for 20 minutes and you've got a number of things to do, and you're sitting there looking at your watch, and then you get disconnected at the last second and you want to throw the phone out the window, or you're driving on the road and somebody cuts you up, and what's the point of getting angry? It's about learning to control your emotions when you want to. It's not about being a robot and walking around in a sort of catatonic state, but it's about when you get to the stage that you want to control these emotions, you don't want to let them out in a negative way. It's learning how to do that. So when it came to racing, racing cars is a very different skill to riding a bike, of course, but there were so many mental strategies that I used, being able to focus on what I had control over, not again, focusing on the process, not the outcome, focusing on the things that I had control, not the variables that were all around me. Because if you're coming into a corner, at Le Mans at 160 miles an hour, and, you look at the wall on the far side of the corner and think, if I don't get this right, I'm going to crash into that wall. This is going to be really, pretty disastrous. Then it'll happen. But if you focus on your braking point, your turning point, the apex, the application of throttle, all the things that you can do correctly, then you'll get through the corner. You don't worry about what might go wrong. You focus on what you have control over.
So tell me, you are a real high achiever. Has that been difficult to balance with your home and personal life? Has one ever suffered, or have you got the answer? Have you got the answer for us for work-life balance?
I wish I did. I guess I was lucky because in the early years when I was cycling, I didn't have a family. I had a very understanding girlfriend who, she would come and watch the racing, and she had her own job up in Edinburgh, and our lives operated separately, and then we'd come together at the weekends. But now that I'm a father and now that we're married, you still have, now I'm retired from cycling, it's not like your life is over and you have no more ambition or no more goals that you want to achieve. I still have numerous things that I want to achieve, but I also realize where that stands in the overall, in your life in general. So getting that balance right. There is no magic answer. There's no secret to it. For me, it's realizing that opportunities come along, and if you turn down too many opportunities, they might not come again. But equally, your kids don't stop growing. You can't press pause and say, just hold that, wait, I'll come back and see you take your first steps next week when I get home. Or, when you learn to ride your bike, I'll come back and see that too. These things just happen, and your kids grow so quickly and things happen so fast. So you don't want to miss out on all those exciting things. But equally, you want to provide for your family, you want to achieve your own goals elsewhere. And I guess everybody has to have everybody knows that their situation is different to everybody else. So it's a very personal thing. But I guess now it's realizing that you have to make the most of every opportunity, and that life is short and you never know what's around the corner. So make the most of it, and try and enjoy the process. That was going back to Steve. And Steve Peters, as you might have guessed, has had a huge influence on my life.
Huge, yes.
Yes, I mean, he's an amazing man. He's written a few incredible books, but he's an amazing guy. He was a forensic psychiatrist and worked with some very notorious people who were in Broadmoor Hospital, and then he came into cycling. So he's gone from kind of quite opposite end of the spectrum. But anyway, always used to say to us the importance of enjoying what you do and having a smile on your face. And when you come into race day, and it could be quite stressful and quite nerve-wracking, if you actually even if you don't feel like smiling, if you put a smile on your face, it can change your whole outlook. And even if inside you don't feel like smiling, it can unsettle your rivals too. If they think, well, why is he smiling? What's he looking so confident about? So it's, I guess, trying to enjoy what you do is a big part of it as well.
Yeah, and also what you said earlier about being in the present. If you're in the present and in the moment with your family, that helps, even if you haven't got as much time as you would like to have.
Absolutely. Not worrying about, once you're doing something, immerse yourself in it, commit to that. Don't worry about what you're not doing, because you can't do your emails right now, or you can't, when you're in work, you can't see your kids. So don't worry about the kids. Know that, when you get back, focus on the job, get that done, and then you can go back and spend quality time with them, and vice versa. So I guess it's the more you worry about what you're not doing, the less capable you'll be at your present task.
Okay, I've got a question, a personal question about the family. Does everyone cycle?
Well, we're almost at that point. Yeah, Chloe is 2, and she's got herself a balance bike now, so she's sort of scooting around on that. Callum loves his bike. He's quite I guess he's not the kind of kid that throws himself at everything. He's quite shy, and he's reluctant to just sort of jump in every single activity. He thinks about things quite a lot and waits before he does things. But cycling, he seems to have loved his bike, and he's got into that really, really quickly, and he loves that. And cycling is one of these few things you can do as a family that you tend to all enjoy together. Most things, it's a compromise that the kids are bored, or vice versa. But cycling, you go out as a whole family, and it's a wonderful thing. It's a lot of fun. And I think when you're an adult, you've not ridden a bike for a number of years, and you get back on it, trying to encourage your kids to cycle, then you can rekindle that love for cycling too.
And it's healthy, of course.
Exactly.
So, this leads me on beautifully to your Hoy bikes, which you've launched specifically for children. Is that because you're a dad? Is that why you went that way? Or to tell us about the Hoy bikes.
Yeah, well, we started 2013. So at the end of, maybe it was 2010, getting towards the end of my career. And I really wanted to have a plan. So I've always liked to have a plan to follow. I'd like to know what I want to do and have goals and stepping stones towards those goals. So I knew that I was going to be retiring from cycling at some stage in the future, whether it was after London or after the Commonwealth Games in 2014. Either way, I knew it was coming soon. So I had to have something in place before I retired. I didn't want to retire and then go, what now? Because you see a lot of sports people struggle with that when they retire from their sport, and it can be a difficult time. So I wanted to have something in place. And I guess I've been so lucky to have had an amazing career and amazing life thanks to cycling. I've seen the world. I've done, amazing things through cycling. So I thought, well, why not try and encourage more people to get into cycling? So it was before we had Callum. Callum was born in 2014. And I guess, it was quite strange because we had the idea to create the kids range before Callum was there. But now I'm so proud of the bikes because we've we tried to create bikes that are as easy as possible for the kids to learn to ride on and to enjoy. And without boring you on details, kids' bikes can be incredibly heavy, incredibly hard to ride. The components can be very difficult to operate, the brakes, the gears. They can look great in the showroom, and then they're relatively affordable, and you take them home and they're just not very good at all. So we thought, let's create the best bikes possible for kids so they can enjoy cycling, they can get the most out of it. So the bikes are very, very lightweight, they're very easy to operate. The geometry is designed for children specifically. And it's great because you have two little test pilots at home that you can bring home the prototypes and they can have a shot of. But yeah, it's all, we sell them exclusively through Evans Cycles, and it's been a great partnership with them. And I've learned a great deal actually in the last 7 years. Again, starting at the very bottom of a completely different ladder business, there are parallels with sport, but I went into it basically as a complete novice, beginner, if you like, and I've been very lucky to have some very interesting and very knowledgeable people to help me out and to learn from. But I'm still very much on that steep part of the learning curve, and every day you learn new things.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you also got into writing for children as well. Was that after the children were born?
Yes. Well, when was that? 2015, I think we started with Flying Fergus. So Flying Fergus, it's a series of books about a boy called Fergus who gets a new bike, or he gets a bike for his 9th birthday. And he's hoping it's going to be this exciting new all singing, all dancing bike from his local bike shop, and it's not. It's a second-hand bike. It was his dad's bike. He's a bit disappointed. He tries to hide it, but his grandpa says, "Don't worry, we'll fix it up. We'll kind of respray it and do it up, and it'll look good as new." And it's all about the adventures that he has on this bike, because it turns out, lo and behold, it's a magic bike, and he can do all sorts of incredible things with it. And yeah, it started out as a bit of fun. I never really thought I could do that kind of thing, because I'd never really, I'd written my autobiography before, but writing for kids age 5 to 8 years of age, it's a very different proposition altogether. But now that I've got kids, it's wonderful, and I really have enjoyed it. We did 10 books together it was Jo Naden who helped me. She's a very successful author, children's author and young adult author. So I basically went to her with all these ideas, and how do you write it at the right level? How do you, without going over the kids' heads or patronizing them or whatever? And I had different characters and different, just all these things. So yeah, we worked together with Claire Elson, who did the illustrations, and created the Flying Fergus series. So that's 10 books in. Still seems quite strange that I've got these kids' books with my name on it. It's wonderful.
Brilliant. Congratulations on that. That's wonderful.
Thank you. So
we've got to talk about speaking, because obviously we're all about speaking. When did you start getting invited to speak to businesses and audiences about your world? Well,
I think the first time ever would have been after Sydney Olympics in 2000. And I remember doing a talk, I think it was at the Scottish Institute of Sports annual, the AGM they had there, and walking up on stage in front of a few hundred people and being absolutely terrified and just thinking, I really don't want to do this. All I did was I told my story about my experience in Sydney, and it was probably very long-winded and dull and monotone, but I got through it. And I got off stage, and I had, it was a real feeling of achievement. And I thought that was really good fun. Why did I, not want to do it? Why was I dreading it so much? And then gradually, and that was just a one-off. And then gradually over the years, I had a couple, maybe after 2004 Olympics, a couple of events then. But it was after London in 2012, and after I retired, when I had more time and I was available to do more events, that I thought, well, do you know what? It's a big challenge, and it's a completely different skill to be able to stand on stage and to talk to people. And I think this is something I would quite enjoy. So I went to get some advice and guidance on how best to improve. And I guess, like anything else, if you get some advice from someone that knows what they're talking about, then it can help. And I've been doing talks since probably 2013. But it's I'm far from being a polished product. But you hope that every time you do it, you do improve and learn and get something back from the audience as well, learn from the audience and their reaction.
Chris, you're a natural. You're an absolute natural. So don't be modest. So tell me, what are audiences asking you to talk about when they invite you?
Well, I guess every audience is different. We generally have a little chat on the phone beforehand, a little briefing call to find out who's going to be there, to learn more about the audience, to learn more about what they're there for. And I usually ask and say, well, what would you like me to talk about? What themes are you discussing or pertinent on the day? And I guess it's not about me standing up there and saying, this is how you should run your business, or this is how you should lead your lives. It's about me telling my story and saying, well, I was just a kid. I wasn't, I used to think that Olympic champions or people who were successful in their chosen field were born that way. They were different to the rest of us, and that's just who they are and who they were. But I realized in my life that that's not the case, that we can all achieve amazing things way beyond what we ever expected. It does, yeah, you do need a bit of luck, you do need, help and guidance and the right people around you. But if you apply yourself, if you set challenging goals, if you have a clear strategy, and if you focus on the process and not the outcome, not worrying about what might go right or wrong, then you can do way more than you'd ever possibly imagine. So I guess I tell my story of how I started, got into cycling, my dream of becoming Olympic champion. And then I usually have a video from Athens from 2004, which is when I became Olympic champion for the first time. And it's quite a dramatic evening, quite a dramatic video, without giving too much away. But that's quite a nice visual, because it's always good to have, something either visual, a video or pictures to sort of bring it to life. And that's, and I guess that is my story. So I go out there, I tell my story, and hopefully that the audience can draw something from that and maybe apply something to their lives. And if not, then hopefully they might have enjoyed just a 20-minute chat.
So Chris, I mean, we've just run out of time. I could talk to you all day. I really genuinely could.
Likewise.
So to finish, what's next? What's next?
Well, I guess, I have goals within my business life. So with the bikes and with the books, I've got clear goals over the next 5-10 years. Driving wise, motorsport, I love it. It's a passion, it's a hobby. I've just finished filming a series which will be aired in February, and it's going to be called Dreams. And I've got to connect essentially racing drivers in different forms of motorsport, and I got to race their car with them in their championship. So basically experiencing lots of different forms of motorsport, which I absolutely love. Technically that's working, but really it's just a lot of fun. I've got other activities too, I've got sort of corporate partners like Science and Sport, who are a nutrition company. I work with them to develop new products and to promote their products. Pure Gym, who are now Britain's biggest gym. They're expanding all around the world. So working with them and learning from them as well. So it's not just about, endorsing something and that's it, stamping your approval on it and walking away. It's about sort of getting involved with the company, learning from them, and hoping to help them too. So and also working with British Cycling, trying to encourage more people to get involved in bikes and to be healthy and to improve their lives through cycling, and working with their relationship with HSBC and British Cycling to promote that. Doing a bit of commentary at the Olympics in Tokyo. So yeah, it's a busy year ahead, but in amongst all that, trying to fit in some time with the family and just enjoying life.
And hopefully some speaking for us too.
Well, absolutely, yes, of course.
Thank you so much, Chris.
No,
thank you so much.
Great to speak to you.